Hey, what's going on, everybody? So today we're going to be talking about Kristi Noem recently got fired. Well, not really. She actually got transferred adjacent to her position and is basically getting paid the same amount of money. It's just with a different title. But let's get right into this here. The first thing I want to address with this piece of shit is the fact that she lied, like blatantly lied about the two ICE shootings just a few months ago. If you'll remember, she had a whole bunch of statements regarding Renee Good, for example. Let me go ahead and play a few of those for you here.
I would say that when these individuals use their vehicles to try to ram our law enforcement and put their lives in jeopardy, that law enforcement officer has to make a decision to protect his life and the individuals around him as well. This vehicle was used to hit this officer. It was used as a weapon, and the officer feels as though his life was in jeopardy. It was used to perpetuate a violent act that this officer took action to protect himself and to protect his fellow law enforcement.
All right, so it's abundantly obvious that she wasn't trying to hit anybody. She wasn't trying to use her car as a weapon. She had her wheel cranked all the way to the right, specifically so that she could get away and not run anybody over. She wasn't aiming the car towards anybody. She was actually aiming it away from them. And I'm pretty sure this is something the ICE officer himself could see, because if we can see the car wheel turning to the right from this angle, then he certainly could have seen her turning the car wheel to the left from his perspective to steer clear of him and get away.
The officer went to the hospital. He was hit by the vehicle, went to the hospital and received treatment, was released, and is spending time with his family now.
Yeah, so that officer wasn't hit by a vehicle, obviously. And why does he have to go to the hospital exactly? He wasn't struck or anything. So those are two blatant lies right there. Let's go into another one about her being a terrorist.
Terrorist, though, without an
This was an act of domestic terrorism,
there
which
had
is
been
perpetuating
no investigation into who she was or what she was about, and yet now you're saying
these
you can't
policies
speak
and
about the incident
procedures that
because of
follow
the
a use of force situation like this are continuing to be put in place. So this is standard operating procedure after every use of force situation, is that we follow these procedures and protocols.
Yeah, there's no evidence for that either. She's not a terrorist. That's another blatant lie. And let's throw this one in there just because I thought it was hilarious, because there's absolutely no evidence for this either.
But we've had almost over 100 times that these vehicles have been used to ram law enforcement officers and to do damage and to harm them.
Really? So 100 plus ICE officers have been rammed by vehicles and have been injured? Again, no evidence for that whatsoever. This piece of shit is just lying out of her ass. And now let's move on to the Alex Preddy shooting, where, if you'll remember, she said that he approached with a 9mm handgun, and it looked like a situation where he wanted to basically shoot a bunch of people and cause the mass death of ICE agents. Here are those clips.
An individual approached U.S. Border Patrol officers with a 9mm semi-automatic handgun. The officers attempted to disarm this individual, but the armed suspect reacted violently. Fearing for his life and for the lives of his fellow officers around him, an agent fired defensive shots. This looks like a situation where an individual arrived at this scene to inflict maximum damage on individuals and to kill law enforcement.
And as you can see, of course, that wasn't what happened at all. So 2 instances of her just lying her ass off, which is probably why she's no longer the secretary of the DHS. The lies just got a little bit too obvious. And I wanted to say something else about this clip too, that I just realized as I was watching it again. You notice how they got the gun away from him, right? And then 2 shots were fired straight into his back, point blank. Well, it appears as I'm reviewing this again, that there was like a 2-second period where he was just laying on the ground, stiff as a board, probably because he has bullets in his back, and then they fire 3 more shots. So this really does look more like an execution to me than a justified self-defense shooting. I really don't see it in any case. And in the case with Renee Good, it's the same thing. She was very obviously turning her wheel all the way to the right. And most people didn't notice this either, but in this clip specifically, you can see that there is nobody down the road. So if she had gotten away from those ICE officers, absolutely nobody was in jeopardy. Now, what these shootings were, obviously, is that they were annoyed with these people, and they're not trained, they're not tempered law enforcement. Their anger got the better of them, and it's not like the kind of anger that some of us exhibit when we get mad and we just do something that is trivial by comparison to literally taking your Glock out and pumping somebody full of lead. That is absolutely psychotic and some kind of psychopathic mental illness right there. That's all that is. Now, that's not the only reason this stupid piece of shit got moved into a comfier job. They also transferred her to this other department where she's making about the same amount of money because of like 7 different instances where she was committing fraud. There was the 8-day-old company that she gave $143 million of taxpayer money to, which turned out to just be a front that funneled all of that money to something called the Strategy Group, which was a consulting firm that had very deep personal ties to Kristi Noem and Kristi Noem's staff at the DHS. Super corrupt. There was also her ad campaign where she spent 220 million taxpayer dollars framed as an attempt to help with the border issue, when in reality all it actually was self-promotion and pure narcissism intended to do nothing more than make her look like a badass and make her look like a super competent person, which she's not. She's actually a super undisciplined and disgraceful human being who shouldn't be trusted with any power or responsibility, especially when it comes to other people's money. But let's keep going here. How about those Gulfstream luxury jets she bought? She bought 2 of those for $200 million, the Gulfstream G700s, so that her and her staff could go all over the country in a glamorous way. Absolutely unnecessary. Get a regular jet. Fly commercial for all I give a shit. Why they don't group up a bunch of government employees and fly them around all together and then drive to their individual destinations to save taxpayer money? Yeah, I don't know. At the very least, you could buy a cheaper private jet than $100 million a piece, right? Well, I guess not if you're a huge fucking raging narcissist. Anyways, let's keep going. How about that $80,000 in undisclosed dark money that she got while she was governor from some American Resolve Policy Fund, some corrupt nonprofit that she failed to report on her federal ethics disclosure forms when she was becoming the secretary of the DHS, something that she was required by law to do, but didn't on purpose so that she could look better on paper. She did this a second time too. That wasn't the only time. $140,000 was received by Noem through her Delaware-based company called Ashwood Strategies LLC, a payment with super obscure origins, and was also not disclosed on her federal ethics disclosure forms when becoming the secretary of the DHS. So that's twice now, undisclosed payments, and 3 individual times that she has completely misused hundreds of millions of dollars of taxpayer money. But let's keep going, because as it turns out, Kristi Noem actually used $200,000 of taxpayer money to help out her own daughter when she was in a bind. I guess she got in trouble with her real estate license. So in order to help her daughter keep her real estate license, she spent $200,000 of taxpayer money. That seems pretty fucking corrupt to me, to just be using other people's money to solve your own personal problems. And I wonder if her daughter got into trouble, maybe because she's learning from her mom, a giant fucking lying, deceitful, thief, piece of shit parasite. But there's even yet one more incident with Kristi Noem and other people's money, where she spent $60,000 to completely outfit her governor's mansion, which is supposed to be a perk that you take with some level of gratitude when you become a governor of a state. But Kristi Noem didn't quite feel like that. It wasn't quite good enough for her. So she spent $60,000 of taxpayer money for a whole bunch of shit to make this house up to her spec, I guess. This included high-end rugs, a sauna, chandeliers, lighting, furniture, paintings, and then at some point there was another $462,000 that was spent on a security fence, which seems a little bit expensive for a fence, doesn't it? But what do I know? I'm not a fence expert or anything. And it's not like Kristi Noem doesn't make good money. As the representative of South Dakota, she made $174,000. When she became the governor of that state, she made $120,000. As DHS secretary, she made a whopping $235,000 per year. So she's had a 6-figure salary this entire time, and yet it's still not enough to feed her rampant narcissism. She needs to go and spend 9-figure sums of money of taxpayer dollars so that she can make herself look really good, fly around on luxury jets, and help all of her friends out at the Strategy Group, whatever the fuck that is, so that they can buy mansions and nice cars and stuff too. Which is exactly the kind of thing that Kristi Noem is into. Because let me tell you a little bit about what Kristi Noem actually owns. Let's start with the most luxurious stuff. She has 2 Rolex watches. She's been seen with 2 so far. a $60,000 Rolex Cosmograph Daytona 18K, and another 41mm Rolex valued at about $20,000. We also know that she owns two pretty expensive vehicles. At some point, she bought a brand new GMC SUV Denali, which often go for over $100,000. These are kind of like the SUVs that you see a lot of government people driving around. It's all blacked out, has all the features, super expensive, and allows you to carpool with all of your corrupt politician friends. But she also has a brand new Ford F-150, which often go for just under $100,000. So she has two Rolexes and two nice brand new vehicles that are both priced around $100,000. But what really caught my eye was her residence, of course, where her and her husband somehow came into the possession of a $3 million ranch house. This is it, and this is the address for it, by the way, if you want to look it up for yourself and do your own research. This is an extremely luxurious property, of course. It's got very well-maintained grass, very well-maintained trees. It's on a nice big, wide-open piece of property that's kind of closed in and stuff by trees, and it has a whole ton of other structures on it, as well as farming equipment for some kind of agriculture business that her family runs, which is a pretty sweet deal if you ask me. So yeah, I think Kristi Noem absolutely embodies the Versailles politician, if that's what you want to call it. Like back in the day in Versailles when all the French people were starving and they were looking at the rich assholes over in the Palace of Versailles, basically just engorging themselves every single day and expressing extreme opulence and greed. And they just said, okay, fuck this. And a bunch of poor people went into the Palace of Versailles and killed all of them. And then everything got a lot better. I think Kristi Noem is the perfect example of one of those people. She is somebody that just does nothing but lie. She's an absolute sycophant. If they tell her to jump, she'll say, how high? Plus, do you want me to suck your dick? And she's somebody who apparently has a $5 million net worth. $3 million of that maybe being the ranch house, and then the rest of it might be spread amongst her cars, her Rolex watches, her jewelry, and then of course, she's raising 3 kids on top of all of that as well. And so you really just wonder, where the fuck did you get all this money? Just like every other politician, it seems like, who goes into office with a already inflated salary, which, if you ask me, hasn't been earned by any means in the last 50 to 60 years, because absolutely no problems in our society are getting solved, and we're all just rotting to death as these people buy luxury furniture and watches and cars. I think they absolutely gaslight the shit out of us. They completely misrepresent the reality because they have all the facts and they're not transparent. So people like you and I are kind of operating in the dark here. But when you really think about it, no, it doesn't have to be this way at all. In fact, it shouldn't be this way. If you really do think about it, actually, we should all be much further along in life. We should have all progressed much further than we have now. Because even back in the 50s, a single income could provide somebody with a house and a car and all kinds of other things, and was enough to raise children with. But since that point in time, technology has only become exponentially better. Each and every one of us is far more productive, or is at least capable of being far more productive, because that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about the potential of every single human being that is not being tapped into right now at all, as we're all suffering, starving, and dying off under these assholes who are just enriching themselves like a bunch of greedy narcissists. We all should be much, much richer than we are now. Because if we were all doing better and life wasn't so goddamn hard and we weren't bogged down with the constant bureaucracy and other bullshit that they make us put up with, I think that we, the people, could get just about anything done at this point. I think the world could be our oyster, but I don't think it ever will be so long as these people are in charge. I think these people are the first problem that we need to solve if we wanted to make our reality a paradise. I think there's a little something called Versailles between us and some very good times. And not really much else. Seriously, like what else is plaguing us right now? I mean, sure, we have medical problems, we have people getting cancer. I really wonder if certain solutions to those kinds of things are being suppressed by these very same people. If we would see like an explosion in our quality of life if we got rid of these people for a million different reasons. But yeah, if you ask me, we have enough to deal with as human beings without this bullshit. And it's about time we put the axe to this once and for all. I'm ready when you guys are. And that's where I'll stop it before we go any further. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.